What's something hilarious your kid has done that, as a parent, you weren't allowed to laugh at or be proud of? My kid excitedly told me today that he'll be saving up the coal he gets for Christmas for a barbecue. Not my kid, but my sister's. My sister was walking past my 3-year-old niece's bedroom. She peeks in and sees her lying on her stomach, ankles crossed in the air, pretending to read her favorite book called I Love Dogs. I Love Dogs, reads my niece. This is so sweet, thinks my sister, as a page is turned. I freaking love dogs. Whoa, what did you say, Ramona? I said I freaking love dogs. The wily little kid even had the sense to censor herself. Wife was driving home with the 5-year-old. Wife, how was your day? Son, good, but I am tired now. Wife, did you play outlet? Son, nah, the kids at school just annoyed me. They kept fricking around. Wife, excuse me, what did you say? Son, the kids make me tired when they frick around. Son, dang, please don't tell dad. Daughter was maybe 3, in church with my parents. Guy across the church had eye surgery and had a patch. During a prayer, she saw him, looked at him, covered her eye and went out like a pirate. Pastor almost laughed mid-prayer. I think kids say so much grown-ups want to. They do it because they don't know any better. We want to do it to see what would happen, but we don't. I asked my 6-year-old yesterday what he did at school and he said jack crap straight back in a monotone voice without even thinking. Keeping it real. Called me dude. I taught her how to snowboard. I'm no longer dad. I'm dude when we go to the mountain, and my ex is now bro. Her mom. My parents were all about respect. Well, this is respect to me, and my heart swells with pride when I hear dude. Did you see that? I was going so fast. I feel this one. My parents were too much about respect and it ended up being distance instead. I honestly worry sometimes that we only connect out of obligation. My kid went through a phase of climbing out of his cot in the mornings, clambering onto our bed, and teabagging his mum. So much for his future therapist to chew on. Dang, Call of Duty players get their starts early these days. I have twin girls, 6 years old. Last night I was in my room and heard one say something that sounded like a curse word. I asked her what she said and she told me chips. I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought you said. The other twin then prances in my room, smug as heck, and says, you thought she said shti? Yes I did. I had to contain my laughter, otherwise, she thinks it's okay for her to say. When my 3-year-old put himself in timeout at daycare because he figured out if he was in timeout, he didn't need to help clean up. And then the following year when we got an incident report because he yelled damn it when the fitted sheet he was trying to put on his cot kept popping off. My parents and grandparents like to tell the story of my sister's first phrase, that goddamn cat. My grandpa swore like a sailor, and said that very often, whenever our cat misbehaved. One day, my sister saw the cat start to climb a shelf, and she yelled it out at the top of her lungs. My grandpa was the only one who ended up being scolded. I was in a queue at a big bookstore in the UK with my daughter who was about 6-ish at the time, and whilst I'm in the busy queue my daughter was looking at the books on a rotating stand. Little did I know that on that stand was a small book of dirty jokes. Just as I was being served, there are about 12 people queuing across 5 tills. My sweet and innocent daughter decides to proudly show her reading and joke-telling skills and shouts out, "Dad, what's the best thing about a BJ?" Everyone in the queue started quietly chuckling whilst I am trying to distract her and simultaneously pay and get out of the show as fast as possible. The girl behind the till was desperately trying not to laugh and looked like she was in pain. Because I didn't answer immediately, my daughter repeated the question. By this point everyone's shoulders were going up and down as they were silently laughing. I paid and quickly grabbed my daughter and put the book back. As we quickly moved towards the door she shouted 5 minutes silence, to which the queues erupted with laughter while I practically ran out of the store. Expert delivery on her part. Not my kid, my mother's best friend's daughter. She was 5 at the time, and at the local grammar school attending a performance of her older sister's school play. Gets bored during the production, wanders out of her seat and into the hallway, where she promptly spies the fire alarm and pulls the handle. As many of you know, those alarms will squirt indelible ink onto the puller's hand as a way to cut down on false alarms. So, obviously, it's a false alarm, and the hunt is on. The principal quickly sees Kathleen's purple hands and confronts her about pulling the alarm. Gives her 3 or 4 minutes of grief. All the while, Kathleen is standing there with her arms folded across her chest. Her only reply is legend. "Gimme a break. You know I can't read." That sign won't stop me because I can't read. My son was not quite 2. Waited at the mall for pictures with the Easter Bunny, but he gets a little nervous when the moment comes. The Easter Bunny hands him a little rubber ducky, which my son is thrilled about. The bunny hands another to him, but as my kid reaches for it, the bunny snatches it back and pats his lap, in a clear gesture of "You can have another ducky if you sit on my lap." My son looked at the duck he already had in his hand, chucks it at the Easter Bunny, and literally storms off. He was so offended. I've never seen a baby that mad. Frickin' BS Easter Bunny tactics. To be fair, the kid isn't wrong. A few years ago my kids lost their hamster up in their game room. He escaped his exercise ball and they couldn't find him. In helping them look for Sammy, I moved the couch and discovered a huge hole. The couch hadn't always been in that spot, but things often got moved around in the playroom during sleepovers and I never questioned it much. When they realized I found the huge hole in the wall, they started defending each other. I told them that they wouldn't get in trouble, but I needed the guilty party to help me patch up the wall. They agreed to both help. One of them may have accidentally let it slip that it happened when he was playing Nerf gun soccer. No, I don't know the rules of the game since they seem to change every time I ask with friends, but my daughter claims that isn't what happened. They are generally pretty honest kids and have agreed to let me know how it happened before I die. I am glad they stuck up for each other and always have each other's back. The effort to move the couch was also impressive. The hole got fixed regardless, but I really want to know what happened. That hole was massive. When I was a kid, I was being a bit of a brat and whining to my dad about something I couldn't do. I kept saying "I can't" over and over. My dad jokingly said, "Don't say that, it's a rude word." Now I knew that the C word was a bad word, but I didn't know how bad it was, so I said, "I'm not saying C, I'm saying can't." My dad was so shocked. Now as an adult, my dad is always like, "It was so unexpected." Just this innocent looking little kid casually dropping the C-bomb like it was no big deal. When my kids were young, my parents split up due to my father's infidelity. We live on a small farm, and one day we were talking about our chickens. We had a rooster my son had named King, and one of our chickens whom he hung out with a lot was named Queen. Well, King decided he liked a different chicken better, as they often do, and we were talking about how King decided he wanted a different girlfriend. Just like Grandpa John, my son exclaimed. Yup, he wasn't wrong. My daughter responded to a bully on the school bus taking her cookies by putting snow in one of their boots and a rotten orange in the other. That is a very creative way of getting revenge. I like it. I let my son watch Army of Darkness before his mother thought he was ready for it. He later walked up to her with a toy gun and growled, "Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun." I thought it was hilarious. She thought I was being a terrible example. I think you were both right. When my daughter was about 3, she was trying to slide at the MC Donald's play place and this bigger approximately 7-9-year-old girl shoved her trying to go in front of her, and my girl just socked her. I think it was just a knee-jerk reaction cause she'd never been physically bullied in any way, and at that point I was fairly confident she never would be going forward either. Lmao. When my son was that age, he would hug and kiss them. Multiple times we saw kids pushing and shoving, knocking him down and whatnot. He'd just give them a hug and a kiss. Often they'd end up running away from the weird little kid trying to hug and kiss them. Not a parent, but I have 2 younger sisters. When they were ages 3 and 4, my 4-year-old sister was sitting on a kid's Ottoman chair and my 3-year-old sister was trying to sit on her lap. 4-year-old sister takes her foot and pushes her off while at the same time says, "Get the heck off the queen." My dad and I both heard it and our jaws dropped, and it took everything to not laugh. My sister-in-law was playing a board game with my 5-year-old. She was getting bored of playing with him, like she usually does, and so she tried to move the game along a little bit with some creative maneuvers. We'd cheating, thinking he wouldn't notice. He looked at the board for a minute and then blank-faced her and said, "Lindsay, that's BS. He also asked his dad, do you even know what the freak you're doing, while he was struggling to put up Christmas lights. Driving my mill around with my wife and 2 years old in the back of the minivan. Was trying to tone down the swearing since she was starting to imitate us. Someone cut me off while driving and I shout son of a, and then catch myself and stop before going too far. From the back of the car in the clearest little toddler voice comes "Bite," perfectly timed. I started to laugh but then got the stare of death from the wife and had to stop. My younger sister was given an assignment to draw a picture of what life would be like without government. She ended up drawing an entire comic book of naked, anatomically correct hippies running around with machine guns. The school called my dad, and when they showed him the comic, while threatening to suspend her, my dad burst into laughter. At home, he gently told my sister that what she did was highly inappropriate, but then framed one of the pages and hung it up in the house. My daughter is 4 years old, and we just lost grandma, so I'm having a somber discussion with her about the situation and tell her that grandma died. She looks at me with her huge watery eyes, blinks, and says, like Mario, really not supposed to laugh when teaching your preschooler about death, but I did. Similar story when telling my daughter about grandma. I used the story of Lion King to help explain. She went to school the next day and told her class grandma had died in a stampede. My daughter, 2 still in nappies, says dad check my nappy. As soon as I pull the back of the nappy to check, she ripped a massive fart. I ask, did you do that to trick daddy? Her answer, yeah. I mean, with that level of control she's ready for the potty. I have 3 sons and there's an age gap. Currently they are 28, 26 and 16. When 16 was 4 and 26 was 14, they had an incident. C. 14 liked to teach 4 naughty things to say. He taught him things like the peanut monster, which is the tale of how girls become girls. C. The peanuts. 4 couldn't pronounce penis. Monster was to be feared. All babies are born boys, and when you do something really bad, the peanuts monster sneaks in at night, cuts your peanuts off and leaves you with a vag. And then you're a girl. So 14 would threaten 4 that if he told me any of the naughty things he was taught, mostly bad words, the peanuts monster would visit. I found this out when 4 was telling the tale to my neighbor while we were over for coffee. At the end of his story, he leaned over to pat her knee and asked, do you understand now? You did something bad, so now you have a vag. How that dear woman kept a straight face, I'll never know. But the moment he turned his back, she lost it. Laughed so hard she had tears running down her face. But that's not the end. 14 had a large group of friends over and 4 was bugging them, as little brothers often do. 14 had to poop, so he was in the bathroom that shared a wall with his room. I heard yelling, so I'm on my way to see what the deal is. 14 is yelling insults from the John of 4, and as I get to the bedroom, I hear 4 yell back, hey 14, don't forget to wipe your vagina. All of 14's friends were cracking up. It was hilarious. He deserved it because he taught him that. I am laughing to the point of tears from the Peanuts monster saga. I have no idea how your neighbor kept it together even briefly. My son learned to read at a pretty early age. I walked him to the park down the street to play one afternoon, and he was crawling through some of the play tunnels there. Usual kids stuff. Little did I know that the usual sullen teenagers in the neighborhood had ironically hung out together in the tunnels, and, to pass the time, they wrote all sorts of things and Sharpie all over most of the equipment. Anyway, my son goes down the slide, looks at one of the words there, and reads it correctly, and loudly. Cocksucker. I can't help but start laughing, which then makes him yell it out loud again, something he did over and over pretty much on our whole walk home. I tried shushing him in between the laughs, but to no avail. When my son was 4, Jurassic World had just been released on DVD. He loves dinosaurs and doesn't scare very easily, so I thought we would rent it and watch it. Here we were just eating our popcorn, watching our movie, and he was loving it. Then we got to the scene where the dinosaur gets eaten by the gigantic ass aquatic Caesaurus. Cue my son. What the frick was that? I was speechless with my mouth to the floor. I finally got my thoughts together enough to ask him what he said. He just looks at me like a deer in the headlights. I had to walk out of the room because I was laughing so hard. We later had a nice conversation. My dad has dated the same woman for like 15 years. She has 4 kids by previous partners, the eldest of which has 2 4-year-old twin boys. My dad sees these kids as his grandkids and he works with the daughter's husband so sees them daily. Recently my dad and his GF split and mine and my dad's dog, Elvis of 13 years sadly had to be put down around the same time. Unbeknownst to my dad, his GF had the kids over at the weekend and they noticed the dog's absence. Instead of her telling them the dog was at Papa's house as was usual for a weekend since the split, she tried to gently explain to them the dog had passed and why he was now in a jar on the mantle. I think she handled it very well. However, she did neglect to explain to the kids that my dad was really upset over his dog passing. So my dad strolls up to the house Monday morning ready for work and is greeted by the daughter, husband and twins. One of the twins goes, "Oh Papa, do you know? Elvis is dust." My dad didn't know whether to laugh or cry. One of my sons has a knack for always cursing appropriately. The other day he got frustrated and said, "Oh what the? Oh no." I almost said frick. I often have to just leave the room to hide my laughter. To be fair though, I try not give the words too much power. My rule is you can curse freely when you're an adult and have things to curse about, like bills. The song Blue Christmas came on the radio and my boys asked about the title. My oldest knew that blue can mean sad, so he asked if it meant sad Christmas. My youngest asked why anyone would be sad at Christmas. I explained that sometimes holidays are tough because they might remind you of family that have died. This might be the first Christmas without them and you'll be sad. I explained, yeah, you'll be sad because you won't be getting a gift from them. The dark comedy and timing of it made me so proud, but it's not exactly Facebook material, you know. My 2 sons are bickering. The youngest picks up a stuffed animal and hits the oldest with it. The oldest says, "That didn't hurt at all. See, I'm not crying." Well, that must have been a problem for little brother because he went to the toy box and dug around finding a plastic toy hammer, ran up and Thor style hit his older brother on the head with it. Then he dropped the hammer and said, "You're crying now." Took everything in my power not to laugh at the absurdity of his indignation and attack. I had to call my mother later so we could laugh about it. My son has speech pathology which he's hating. He was crying that he didn't want to talk about cars anymore. I told him it wasn't a problem. We'd ask the speech therapists to talk about something else. His dad chimes in, "Yeah, tell her you want to talk about boobies." My son followed through with this idea. When my 4-year-old daughter told me, "I love you so much I want to scoop out my eyes." What? I mean your eyes. My co-worker was telling us about her 3-year-old. He was being really bad and so she told him she was gonna call Santa. She gets out her phone and does the whole spiel with pretending to call Santa and telling him how bad her son is being. After she hangs up, they exchange looks and she asks if he has anything to say. Call Santa back and tell him I said crap. She started laughing telling us his story at this point, but then continued that she told him he couldn't say words like that. He looks at her and says, "Well, you can't hear me say this," and he starts mouthing the word frick in a row. That reminded me of something my 4-year-old said. I just had a new baby so he has been acting out somewhat, but I told him I would have to call Santa and tell him that he has been acting badly, and he immediately came back and said I'm gonna call Santa Claus and tell him you're B. I was simultaneously livid and trying not to laugh my butt off. You have been visited by the safety doggo. Subscribe and you will be safe from all danger for the next 24 hours. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.